And regardless of your status, documented or undocumented, there are people in need. And this is a state that steps up always to support those in need.
Governor Newsom today announced the creation of a $125 million relief fund specifically for undocumented immigrants in this state. The governor says undocumented workers make up about 10% of our state's workforce and that many of them are working right now in essential industries still up and running. This money will be distributed by community groups. We are joined now to talk more about this fund here by immigration attorney Inna Simakovsky. Inna, it's really good to have you on tonight. First, let's just start off with how big a difference you believe a relief fund like this can make for undocumented workers here in California and their families in the midst of this crisis.
Thank you for having me. I think that this is a very important first step. California has always led the efforts in the undocumented community and advocacy for the undocumented community. I think it's imperative that a fund like this be set up, but I also think that this is just a first step. So much more is needed, and this will help families, but this will not resolve the crisis that these undocumented families are facing.
I want to get to some of the other steps you believe should be taken here in a moment, but just for some of the details here on how this money is actually going to be distributed. We're hearing that each worker can expect to receive a $500 payment and potentially up to $1,000 for a household. What is the criteria to be eligible for some of this money here, and when and how are workers able to apply?
I was given the press release that Governor Newsom announced today, and what it states as that this will come about at the first of the month of April. And the criteria has not been laid out, but it's going to be run by a partnership of community organizations that have experience doing this type of fund distribution.
So in terms of the breakdown of this fund, 75 million of it we know is coming from the state coffers, and then the expectation is that we're going to have another $50 million in donations from nonprofit organizations, from private donors as well. How important do you believe it is for these nonprofit groups and for private donors out there who want to help out to step up to really make sure there is enough money to go around?
I think it's vital. I think the private and the nonprofit sector have to work together. I think the federal government is not doing enough at this time, especially for the undocumented community. And I think it is vital for people to step up. Now that California has a fund, people from all over the country can donate to this fund so that services are not duplicated and fundraising is not duplicated. But the only way that we can get out of this is if this fund is supported, and we rely on these workers. These workers are on the front line in many of the industries that we use, and so it's imperative that we step up and support these workers and that we support the nonprofits that are going to be asking for donations from us.
Yeah, many of the undocumented workers who are still on the job here in California, of course, are in some of these essential industries, obviously the agriculture industry, the healthcare industry as well. Do you believe in terms of, I mean, obviously when we talk about healthcare workers, there's a lot of talk about whether there is enough protective equipment for these folks. Do you have concerns about undocumented immigrants, whether it's in an agricultural setting, a healthcare setting, being concerned or reluctant about speaking up if they don't have the proper protection during this kind of a pandemic?
Of course. I mean, the undocumented community is always the silent community. They do the work and they do it quietly, and they're just trying to survive, and they're trying to not get deported. So I think a lot of this community is not saying anything. We are here in Ohio, and a lot of our healthcare workers do not have correct protective gear. We as immigration attorneys are asked to bring our own protective gear into the prisons when we see our clients. So I am positive that the undocumented community does not have the protection that it needs and will not be saying anything in fear of retaliation. That's the way it's always been.
Yeah, they are certainly put in a tough position at a time like this. We have to leave the conversation there. We really appreciate your insight here on this topic. Immigration attorney Inna Simakovsky, thanks so much for coming on tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Take care.